Welcome to Adoption Now, the podcast that brings real, powerful stories of adoption to life. Whether you're here to share your journey, learn from others, or be a part of a growing community, you are in the right place. Join us as we explore the heart, challenges, and beauty of adoption. And now, here's another inspiring episode.
At the end of the day, I choose you.
Hi, welcome to Adoption Now podcast, telling your adoption story. I'm your host, April Fallon. Welcome to season 8. I hope that you are loving these stories as much as we are. If you are new to Adoption Now, my husband and I are the adoptive parents of 4 darling children, but we did say yes to 7 placements. So our last 14 years in adoption has been filled with joy and challenges, and we definitely know the heartbreak and beauty of the adoption story. We believe in the power of storytelling as it unites the adoption community together, and that's so important to us. We share stories from the perspective of adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive parents. We want to adopt the whole story. I know you guys have heard me say that all the time, but it's so important to understand the whole story so that you can have empathy as you are jumping into your adoption journey. And we want to do that together with you. Most of you know we're a nonprofit. Thank you so much for your donations. And thank you for joining our new Patreon page. We're so excited about this because it's a way to bring everybody together. We always get asked, how can we support your show? And this is a way where you can support the show and be a part of the community. We share backstage stuff. We share Adoption Now swag. It is just a really fun place to be if you love adoption. So you can check it out at patreon.com/adoptionnow. All right, today we have our guest in studio. I love when they come in studio. You can see their faces and we just have this kindred spirit. I'm so grateful to God that He brought us Darcy Olsen. She is the founder and CEO of the Center for the Rights of Abused Children. It's an organization that helps fight to protect America's abused children. They have helped, get this, 775,000 children. That is incredible. She is a foster mom of 10, adoptive mother of 4 children, and she also has a dog, a cat, and a hamster. I mean, I don't even know how you have time for all of it. Darcy, welcome to the show.
April, thank you so much for having me on this show.
We are going to have so much fun today because immediately when we started talking, I could just tell that you and I have kind of a similar story and how we got started and what we were faced with. And you sent me a 7-minute clip, which I'm going to put on our social media because it is so empowering the way that you tell your story. You're literally like walking to a hospital to pick up a baby and you haven't been a mother before. Let's start there.
Oh my goodness, April. So I, like so many of us, always wanted to be a mom. And I had this vision and I was going to do it like everybody else. I was going to meet the right man. I was going to have a beautiful engagement and get married and then start having my babies. And none of this had happened for me. And one day I was praying and I felt truly inspired to become a foster parent. And it felt like it was out of the blue, although in hindsight, I can see the puzzle pieces coming together. So I was single. So I said, I'm going to go help a teenager. And I went to an orientation and the social worker said to me, would you be willing to open a crib? We have hundreds of babies in shelters and in office buildings. And we would be so thankful if you could just put a crib at the foot of your bed. And I immediately said, but don't you have any married couples who can do this job better?
Right.
And she just repeated herself. And she said, we have children staying in shelters. And if you would please open a crib, we would be so grateful. And that really touched my heart. So I said, all right, Lord, if that's what you want. I called my best girlfriend who reminds me of you, April. We went to Target. We built a crib. And I got a call the first day I was licensed to go over to the local hospital to pick up a baby. And on my way in, there was a little chapel off to my right. And I was so thankful I was early and that this chapel was there. And I went in and I'll never forget it, April. I just fell to my knees and I sobbed and I prayed because I was by myself, which was not my vision to parent. And all I knew was that there was a little baby girl up in that NICU who'd been up there for 2 weeks. And she'd been on a morphine drip and she had nobody. And I was going to be that somebody. And so I just prayed to God that I would do justice by that baby and by her birth mother that obviously had lovingly brought her into this world. And I closed my prayer. I went up and knocked on the door and opened the door to the most beautiful baby I've ever seen. Today she's 12 years old. And she became my first adoption.
Oh my goodness. Talk about that first couple nights. Well, first of all, a favorite part of your story is that you had to get in the wheelchair. And I have been in the wheelchair as well, where you are like, I didn't birth this baby. And they're like, you get in the wheelchair.
Yeah, there is this thing. The hospitals have these regulations when you pick up these foster infants. And they make you sit in a wheelchair and they put the baby in your arms. And I'm telling you, the woman pushing me out was a grandmother. And it just felt so wrong to me, right? I should be opening the door for her. I hadn't just had a baby. This baby's not even mine, right? I'm just taking care of her for a little while, I think. But they wheel you right out. And that really was the beginning of what has been a really wild and fabulous adventure in fostering and adoption. And I am just so grateful that I followed that inspiration. And, I don't pride myself as being one of those people who talks to the Lord every day. Some people are like that. And I'm more regular, I fall off. I do things that are wrong sometimes. And I'm just so thankful that was something I got right.
So talk about your little girl. How did she do? How did she attach? Did she have to detox at home?
Well, she did detox at home. She had all of the things that I read about. She had the shakes, and I needed to do dark lights. And I wore her on my chest in a Moby wrap and hiked with her, and I didn't part from her at all. I even took her into work, and she began to grow, and she started to hit her marks, and that was absolutely incredible to me, given what she had come through in utero. And one of the things about taking in these little ones who have been drug exposed that I think is so common to this incredible audience of amazing people you have, April, is that there really isn't a single source for us to go to. Doctors do not have a protocol for babies who withdraw. The stuff is not written up. People in general, I have found, are not honest about many of the challenges that our children face. Of my 4 adoptions, 3 of my children have special learning needs. And I'm fine with that. But I wish people would be a little bit more honest about it, right? We're moms. We'll deal with it. We'll figure it out. But a little advanced warning would help.
Right.
So we really, as moms, as adoptive moms, especially in the drug crisis, we are on the front lines. And we really need to tell the doctors what it is that we see.
Absolutely.
And advocate for our children and what it is that we know they need. I remember at school, one of the teachers saying, she just doesn't want to behave. And I finally had to pull her aside and say, look, this child doesn't have normal executive function, and you can punish her all day long and you are not going to get the results you need. And you have to be maybe more firm sometimes than you like to be. And you have to explain things that you wish you didn't have to explain for your child, but we can do it and they can do it. And I still believe, regardless of some of those setbacks, look, we all have setbacks in life. And I've told my kids, you can be sorry that XYZ happened, but that's it. It's, we're not going to have a pity party. You're going to fulfill the measure of your potential. And we are going to do that together.
I love that. You know what? It just reminds me of the things that I say all the time about my children is I feel like I'm on this endless treasure hunt or scavenger hunt, right? It's like you find the one thing that works and you're like, yay. And then you got to go on another scavenger hunt, right? And you got to find another doctor sometimes. And sometimes you have to find a secondary doctor, and you have to be your child's advocate. And I will tell you that if you'd have told me I had to do that, I would have been like, I'm out. I don't want to be, I just want to have a good time. I just want to have fun. I don't want to go to these meetings and, be serious. But when you love a child and when you know that they deserve a better education, or there's a different way, or your child and that doctors need to look at X, Y, and Z, that just naturally comes out of you. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I could do it. I'm not even that loud, or I'm not assertive. It comes out of you. And I want to encourage you, if you're in a position right now where you're feeling defeated, that we're here just to encourage you and give you that confidence that you can do this and your voice does matter, and find somebody that will listen to you, because we have fought so hard for our oldest daughter as well, which is a very similar story. And I'm telling you, without us being at the school, talking to them, showing up at these IEP meetings, she would not have the help that she needs. And she wouldn't be able to thrive. She would be frustrated. And let me tell you, Darcy, she still wouldn't be tying her shoes.
Right.
She could not tie her shoe. She could not cross the midline. So she couldn't put on her seatbelt. She couldn't ride a bike. And it felt hopeless. I thought for a minute, maybe she just can't do these things, until we found a doctor that said, oh, no. We're going to work on that. We're going to work on the core. We're going to get her to do it. And when you used to ask her, can you tie your shoes? She would cry. She would just cry. And now she's like tying her sister's shoes. She's tying anybody's shoes she can, because she's so happy she can do it. And that's what you're talking about, is you get to be a part of this child's success, right?
Yes. And April, I just love what you're saying to this audience. If anyone is feeling discouraged, I mean, we have all felt that discouragement at one time or another. And that's not just your adoptive children, that's biological children too. And the club of motherhood is like the best club you can ever belong in. We all encourage each other. I'm like you, I'm completely reachable by email. I take those calls night and day from other moms who are struggling, because I have been there. I've woken up in tears before, at frustrations, at worries and concerns. And sometimes we're the ones who pull each other up the mountain. I just love that. I'll tell you, your little girl learned to tie her shoes. And my little girl, she hated being on an IEP plan, which is one of the special education designations. And she said, Mom, I'm going to work my way off this. And I said, honey, you just do the best you can. You don't worry about that. Like, you're perfect the way you are. And we're going to learn, and we'll work around it. If we can't get over it, we'll go under it. We'll go anyway. 3 years later, lo and behold, this child, she worked so hard. She worked her way off of the IEP onto a 504, and the principal of the school held a party.
Oh my gosh.
They said, we have never seen this before. And I said, well, this girl has fight, and she has persistence. And so, that won't be for everybody, but goodness, I'm with you, April. We're the moms, and we don't give up. We don't give up until, and if they say, this is as far as I can go, then we say, all right, I got you right here. But otherwise, the sky's the limit.
That's right. Okay, let's talk about baby number 2.
Oh my gosh, baby number 2. So I joke about baby number 2. So I was fostering baby number 2. And baby number 2, I knew was going to go to an aunt. So this little baby was temporary and wonderful, tiny little thing. My adoptive baby number 2 is the one I'm giggling about, because we joke, he was such a fat little baby. He came to me eating burritos at 6 months old, and he was so chunky, which is unusual in this world, right? He was just such a healthy little baby, and he was so fat that he could not crawl. He could only scoot. And everybody jokes, and his nickname in the family is Meatball. And it turns out he's a really athletic little boy. But in his case, what his story was, the case manager had come out to visit for the other baby that I was taking care of. And she put her phone down and looked at me very seriously. And it just kind of caught my breath, because I thought, you're prepared for the worst, I think, sometimes. And she said, we have this beautiful baby boy on our docket, and I would really like him to be part of your family. And I just got those chills down my spine, and I thought, like, God is sending a son. And she said, would you like to see him? And I said, I don't need to see him. Like, it's a yes. So he was a yes. We called him our Christmas ham, because that's about the time he came to us. And he is today an awesome soccer player, and incredibly defensive and protective of his older sister. They're only 6 months apart. And in fact, their skin color is very different. She's very light. He's quite dark. But they always had about the same height. And as children do who grow up together, they walked the same, they talked the same. And people frequently asked me when they were little if they were twins.
Really?
Because they didn't see the physical differences. They saw the physical similarities. And it touched my heart. It's just one of those amazing things about
adoption.
The kind of family that love creates. Yeah.
Okay. Is your family like around you at this time? I mean, what are people saying to you? Because you're like a full-time businesswoman.
Right. So like around the sixth baby. So look, April, I kept feeling inspired, and I'm not someone who's going to be like, oh, I'm going to turn away the Holy Spirit. Like that was the inspiration I had. I knew it. I felt it. I had to do the work. And about around the sixth baby, because nobody would rationally choose that probably. And my older brother said to me, I'm so proud of you, Darcy, but at some point, like you're going to have to stop, and you're not going to be able to help them all. And I joke that it's the reason I created this organization was to tell my brother that he is in fact wrong, that I can in fact help them all if what I do in creating an organization is to gather tens of thousands together, because we can do more, we can be more, and we can change more for these children together. And that's why I founded this organization, because dang it, you know what? He's right. I obviously couldn't do it all myself, but I knew more needed to be done. And that's why I created the Center for the Rights of Abused Children.
Let's talk about that in just a minute. But you went on to bring children into your home and then adopted 2 more after, right? So where was that in the timeline?
Oh my goodness. It gets hard. It's hard to remember. I think I had 3 more after baby 2, and then baby 6, and then baby 7 stayed, and then 3 more who did not stay. They all have different journeys. One just was a beautiful story. She had a grandmother to go to. That grandmother and I are still in touch. She's so thankful, even though, I only helped for 6 weeks. It felt like nothing. And, the grandmother, she's got a mother's love. So she's just so grateful for that time. And I was grateful to be able to stand in. But I had another situation, April, where, we all hope these stories won't go, but I'm going to share it if that's okay.
Yes.
One of my babies I had since his birth, and I took him home, and as ordered by the court. And about 24 hours later, I got a call from the local hospital to come down to the hospital. And I thank goodness that I had my father with me that day, because I had all my other 4 and my father. And I thought they just needed to look at the insurance card. Nothing had occurred to me that something could have gone wrong. And when I got down to the hospital and I went into the waiting room, it was just like on TV. And the doctor came out with the mask and his hands and gloves. And as soon as he made eye contact with me, I knew that this baby had passed away in the night, and they could not determine the cause of death. And I was the only mom he had known. And of course my kids loved him. And, I collapsed in my dad's arms, and as you would expect a grieving mother to do. And my beautiful stepmom took all my other kids across the street to McDonald's so I could talk more with the doctor and collect myself. And, we will never know exactly what happened, but I think, in my heart, I think that he was just too small to survive his injuries. And
so you brought him home and then brought him back to birth family.
The birth family, yeah. And he had I had taken him to the doctor 3 times that week. So it's a grief that is very unique in the fostering world. I know that there are going to be listeners out there today who have had children that they loved and cared for who went on and for whatever reason didn't make it. And we don't have grieving groups and, really under the law, not recognized as their mothers, but just know that I know your heart. And I had a beautiful prayer. It helped me that day. And this may help some and may not help others. But in the prayer, the gentleman said, just know that when you cross over one day that he will recognize how much you loved him and you'll see him again. That helped me. I know a lot of people don't have that faith, and I don't judge that. I spent a lot of my life without it as well. But that did give me some comfort. But look, it's a hard road. But as I've told people, and I continued fostering after that, it is a hard road for a mother, but it is a harder road for a child. And love is not always joyful and cheerful, but it is an action, and it is something that we can give these children they desperately need for the time that they have.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your stance on reunification.
Yeah. So I think like most people, when we see a child separated from a mother, the immediate hope is that whatever brought that child, for whatever reason they had to be separated, you hope that it can be fixed and healed. And many of us have drug users in our families, and we love them, and we've seen all kinds of things, and you always hope for that kind of redemption. But I also think there need to be time limits on how long we can give an adult at the expense of a child, at the expense of a child who needs the love and stability of a family. So under federal law, you've got about 12 to 15 months to get to the point where you can parent. And if you can't do that successfully, that's when things start heading towards severance. And I think that is really critical, because as much as you may feel you have a right to parent, you have actually a right to parent responsibly. And if you cannot or will not care for your child, that child has the right to seek a grandma or a relative, or in a case like mine, a loving foster family who will give them the safe and loving home that every child deserves.
Is that what led you to start the Center for the Rights of Abused Children?
That's a big element. Just in fostering 10 children, I saw so much brokenness. I saw one of the children I took in as an infant was still in the system 8 years later because she had been returned so many times, in and out and in and out, and then to an aunt and then to an uncle. And, by 8 years old, she was broken. The state had really taken basically a perfectly healthy baby and destroyed much of her childhood, all for the parent. And that isn't right. I think everybody has rights. The child has rights, mom has rights, and we need to give a little more consideration sometimes to these little ones. In my home state, where we founded the organization in Arizona, I went into court for my first baby and quickly realized that, the biological family, although they did not show up, they had court-appointed attorneys for free. The state agency, the Child Protection Agency, had attorneys to protect their rights and make sure they didn't do anything wrong. And the abused infant and child, in later cases, had no attorney. I could not believe this. But, you think in this country, what I thought was, I was used to nursing infants back to health, but what I did not expect was that their lives would be in danger again in the American courtroom. That's where you expect a child to be safe, not in danger. So we changed the laws here, so now every child has an attorney to fight for their rights, their safety, all of those things. And we're working on changing that so that children across the country have attorneys. And I don't want to forget to say this, April, we have a pro bono law clinic where we help children in foster care who are stuck and in very dangerous situations. We've helped kids all over the country, and we're working to expand that to be able to help more kids in need. So if there's a foster parent out there, you might be a kin, whatever. I don't care if you're biological or not. If you are fighting on behalf of a child in foster care, you can reach out confidentially through our website, and we might be able to help. We would certainly try.
Tell us what that website is.
That's thecenterforchildren.org, thecenterforchildren.org.
Hey there, listeners. Did you know that the next 30 seconds could have been yours? With over 1 million downloads, advertising with us is like having a VIP ticket to the biggest adoption party in town. Sound like the perfect spot for your brand? Let's come together and make a difference. Email info@adoptionnowpodcast.com to get started. Join the Adoption Now Patreon community and be part of something extraordinary. Your support helps to fund crucial projects, empower families within the adoption triad, and make a real impact. With exclusive content, behind-the-scenes access, and special perks, you'll see firsthand that taking the next step with Adoption Now brings you a deeper sense of connection on your journey. Learn more at patreon.com/adoptionnow.
I think that you are bringing in a safety net for a lot of families. I know that it's hard for families to sign up for foster care. Absolutely, they are taught about reunification. We are all about that. But like you said, 12 months, 15 months, 2 years later, kids are going back and forth and the trauma just keeps happening over and over. When are we saying enough is enough? And the child has an opportunity to be adopted and be in a family and heal. And we are not allowing that to happen state to state. And you are saying, no, we need this safety net. We need to speak on behalf of children and also to empower families to say, it's not so fearful if I say yes to foster care, because if I happen to fall in love with this child and they become adoptable, I can adopt them. I can't tell you how many people reach out to us and they're in the midst of basically hell. They really are. And I mean, I hate to use that word, but it's horrible to be fighting with the court when, for instance, dad is in jail and he's the only family member, but he still has rights, but he's in federal prison. This happened in Wisconsin. And they were fighting and fighting. It was like, he's in there for a very long time. He's not going to be parenting, and this child could have a safe home. What is going on?
Right. And in those situations, April, I would encourage people to reach out to our pro bono clinic. That is what we are here for. We are here for those kids. And we know that in most states, the kids do not have attorneys fighting for their rights. They might have a guardian ad litem, but they're actually in general not like traditional attorneys. CASAs cannot do this work as much as we love CASAs, but it's not the same as being able to file a motion and tell a judge where the law is. And we believe children have a constitutional right to attorneys, and we'd like to actually get that ruling up to the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, our clinic is here to help in these situations. So I just encourage you, please reach out. You are not alone. Mm-hmm. There are hundreds of thousands of foster families across country who are in these situations, and they're not always just foster. I mean, we've got a situation right now. I won't name the state because it's a live court case, but we have siblings who have been separated and put into group homes who desperately want to live with their aunt. The aunt is safe and clean and wonderful, and the judge doesn't want to grant this because the aunt's been a bit of a squeaky wheel about the kids not getting services. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And the kids want to be together. They want to be with her. They have a home to go to. So we filed, and come hell or high water, we are going to get those kids to grandma. So just know, sometimes it's biological family that is fighting also for the best interests of these kids, and we also will help you.
But you are not an attorney.
No.
That's my favorite part about this whole thing.
I am not an attorney, and I think that's one of the reasons I value them so much. Like when I went into the courtroom as a mom with these kids, I thought, gosh, I'm a fighter by nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a mother bear. I got that going for me, but there were things I could not do. And I'll tell you, our lead attorney who runs the law clinic, how he ended up coming into this work was he had won cases before the United States Supreme Court. He is an incredible litigator, wonderful human, wonderful father. And he said, the moment I knew that I needed to make this change and join the Center for the Rights of Abused Children I was in the back of the courtroom for one of my foster children. I am a very capable attorney, and I could do nothing because the laws were not there and the child could not have an attorney. And he said that powerlessness and seeing the life of a child just hanging in the balance of truly a bureaucracy at that point, he said enough is enough. So he will fight just as hard as I will. And all of the entire team at the Center for the Rights of Abused Children has just as much passion and commitment as I do.
Let's talk about your children before we end this, because tell us their ages, their names, just tell us about them. And I also want to know, because my 4 are really involved in what I do, right? So if I was to walk away, and I've talked about this before, if I was to say, you know what, I'm just going to go back into media, they're like, what?
No way.
No, these are children. Because their identity is also in this, right? Their story is wrapped in this.
Yes. And you know what? Some people frown on that. And I've heard people say, oh, you should let your children reveal this. And, you have to wait till they're 18. And I you know what I say, that's for you. Okay. I made this decision for my children. And I made it for a reason, because there are hundreds of thousands of children in need. So I made the decision to let them know they're adopted. They live a public life. They're old enough now so they're 12. It's girl, boy. They're 12, 11, 10, and 7. So it's like a giant slumber party. The oldest boy is super protective of everybody. And my oldest is called Mama Fia. And she also helped with all the little ones we brought in. And she actually, when we have events, she will take the stage and she will just say, thank you for supporting this. And she just says whatever comes to her heart. And it's usually something like, I'm just so glad I got a mom. Aww. And I mean, that's all it's about. Like, the car smells like French fries and feet. And that's my family. And so some kids may get a smoother ride, but everyone deserves a mom and hopefully a mom and dad or a family of some kind. And so they're in it. And one day she wants to take over, and you know what? She just might do it.
I say that all the time. Is every time I say, when people are like, well, you're telling their story, or, they're really involved in adoption. Do they want to talk about adoption all the time? They do. And this is their life and they love it. And I think that it also helps them find identity in what they're going to do as well. God would not have given me these children if my calling didn't somehow match up with what their calling is, right? And I'm equipped to help them and prepare them. And because I do this, then they must be a part of that story as well. And they love it. They absolutely love it. I cannot pull Adoption Now away from them. Also at home, often they call me April Fallon. I'm April Fallon. What do you think about that, April Fallon? And it's funny. I mean, they're not trying to be disrespectful. And I love that. I really feel like we have some really good conversations, even listening to this story, right? They're going to listen to the story and be like, oh my goodness. And they're almost our ages, Mom. And then they'll ask me questions. And we're always talking about somebody else's story, their story, or just adoption in general.
Yes. And I think it's so important too. I mean, it normalizes this, there's no shame in adoption. I mean,
it's not a disease.
You're not, you are loved. This is cliche, but you are loved. You are chosen. I would not in a million years have undone this path. I mean, I can't imagine not having these exact 4 children. And, I do want to say something about biological family. I am very pro biological family when it is safe. One of my children had a birth mom who got clean, got married, has 3 children, and we have seen her a few times. Now, she and I agreed. This child is too young for the concept of 2 moms, right? I'm mom, right? I'm raising this child. She agrees with that. She doesn't think she's got her own 3, right? But this child will grow up knowing these folks as friends. And one day when the concept of, did you know you had a biological mother, that relationship will be there. And I have yet another one, my oldest. We just recently were able to meet bio mom, a bio grandma, and a couple of siblings. She's always wanted to do that. She loved it. But her brother, the 11-year-old, is very protective. He would not meet them. He was not interested. He said, you left my sister as a baby. I want nothing to do with you. And you know what? I respected him too. And that is the thing. I think I hear a lot of people trying to put on these kids, oh, you should want your biological identity, or you should want your biological family, or you should never want anything to do with those people because they were criminals or they were this or that. You know what? Each of my children, when it is safe and they're old enough, can make those decisions. And I respect that for my daughter. She really needed to see. She wanted to see where she got those cheekbones, right, and where she got those long legs. And I respect her brother for saying, you know what, I don't know if I can ever love these people who didn't love you from the start, right? And I get it, and that's okay. And I want to support them in that. And so, it's up to them. So let's stop trying to tell them how they should feel and how they should be. And let's just encourage their strong growth and let them make those decisions as they get older.
I absolutely agree with that. And that's why we have that gray line. We talk about it all the time in Adoption Now, the gray line, right? There's not an answer that fits all. That's why this is so exciting. Also, it's fascinating. It's interesting the way that you can have 4 children and one of them is like, I can't wait to meet my family. One of them's like, no way. And we always say this in our family, get in your hula hoop. Have you ever heard that? No. You got to be in your hula hoop. Are you in your sister's hula hoop? Because the way that they feel, they're allowed to feel within their hula hoop. And you can't go into their hula hoop and tell them what they should be feeling, what they should do. They're having a moment. Let them be in their hula hoop and let them feel these things. And I'm listening to you. And then the other end will say, okay, well, I want to say this. Okay, but you're not going to jump in her hula hoop. You stay in your hula hoop. You can tell me how you feel. And it really gives them individuality. It allows them to explore different feelings. I know some of you listening are going to say, well, aren't you pro open adoption? I am pro open adoption. And private infant adoption, open adoption is totally different than foster care open adoption. It's a completely different story. Sometimes there's things there. I mean, in both cases, to protect the child, and you really have to feel that out. You really have to know in your heart, as you said, Darcy, what's for you. What's right for you? And as we're talking, some of this truth is going to be like, yes, that feels right. This feels right for our kids. But I'll tell you what's right every single time is allowing your child to have their own voice. That's right all the time. When you allow them to express who they are, negative or positive, about their story, about their family, you are allowing them to grow and you are giving them a safe place to decide how they feel about their adoption and about their story and about the family. And I love that because they don't always stay there either. They might say, well, I don't want to do this. And then it evolves, but we've allowed them to do that. And I don't take personal offense, to anything they're saying.
I agree. And April, it's funny. So I guess you're in favor of open adoption and I actually tend toward closed adoption. And that may be because my adoption experience is through foster care, but I'll just give people a situation, half of all trafficking in the United States takes place by family members, and I had a foster baby who was born out of a trafficking situation. And let me tell you, I don't think it would be right in that situation to say, hey, I think you need to meet the man who raped your mother. Okay. There are reasons for closed adoptions. There are reasons children are in foster care. Many of them are unimaginable. And all I would say is, please don't criticize the foster mom or the adoptive mom. You don't know the story behind that child. Mm-hmm. And a lot of moms are not going to share it because they don't want you to know that particular fact about their child, right? Mm-hmm. So you could think the child came out of a perfectly great situation, blah, 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 and why is mom withholding? Well, you don't know.
Right.
And so, please don't judge, and let's support the mothers and fathers who know these children best. And we all know we do best by our children, and support them in the decisions that they make.
Mm-hmm. I think open adoption is so interesting. It's a fascinating conversation, and we always kind of land at, we are open about adoption. We are open about talking about it. We're open about helping people. We are open. Not all of my children have open adoptions, and some of it is for that protection. I mean, and our listeners have heard my story when we tried to adopt a little boy from foster care, and it was not a good match. He was too close in age to our daughter, and he had severe trauma. But every time his mother would call, I'm not kidding you, he would spike a fever. Immediate. The abuse that she put him through triggered his body into such fear and anxiety that he would be instantly sick. We fostered him. He ended up going to another family. And when he did, we pushed for closed adoption because he wasn't going to heal. Every time mom called, it reopened that wound, right? And we told them what we had experienced. We talked to the attorneys and decided that that was best. And I felt in my heart in that situation, it wasn't a broad decision. I had to look at that one individual situation and fight for that child. And we decided that was what was best. And he healed and he's doing great. And maybe when he's older, he will be able to circle back around. But when they're little, they don't understand that. And that sort of trauma can be reoccurring. So I agree with you in that too. Everybody has kind of their own journey, and foster care is definitely different. But if you are feeling led to adopt through the foster care system, I love this episode because often there's so much fear that surrounds it. And what Darcy does and her team does is they kind of say, if you get into a situation, we are here for you. Here is a resource for you so that you don't have to walk in fear or turn away what God is saying because you're afraid of loss or you're afraid of the obstacles. God has equipped you, just like he's equipped Darcy to raise 4, right? And you're driving the, what'd you say? You're driving the Suburban.
The total mom car. It even has the kids drawing, you know, those markers that you can draw on mirrors and windows. So one of my 7-year-old who, he's got special needs too. So he drew this heart. He drew the whole family, including the adopted dog, the adopted cat, and the hamster, but all the age, and he put everybody's ages, but all the numbers are backwards because he's still, but I love, you know, it's like my favorite thing on the car, right? Is like that's so legitimate and authentic to who our family is. And, you know, I do want to say something to those, because you mentioned what a lot of people call disruption, right? You take in a child, you have this intention of adopting the child, and you realize we're not the fit. And we had a situation like that. And I feel that the agencies, they frown on you, and it's almost like they criminalize you when you say this child isn't a good fit. And I want the moms and dads out there to know that sometimes when you foster, you're meant to be the bridge. Yep. And I had a child who was 2 years old and had been through so much trauma that she already had reactive attachment disorder. Yes. And with my other children, I'm realizing, and I obviously studied up a little bit on this, but I felt so strongly that this girl needed to be an only child in a family where there could be at least one stay-at-home parent. And I was nowhere close to providing that. So I told the agency, and I said, look, I will keep her. We will love her as long. And when you find that family, you call me. We're not going to send her back into the system. We're going to be stable. And when her mom, her now adoptive mom, got the phone call, she said she got chills and knew sight unseen that the agency had identified the right child for them. And they had done well financially. She had been a Montessori teacher. So just so much patience and wonderful. And that little girl is now around 10 and she is thriving. And I'm so glad that I pushed through the sadness of feeling like I was failing her, or was I just not liking her, or all of those guilt feelings you feel as a mom. And I did what was right for her, and it was right. So it's also okay to trust that sometimes you're the bridge.
Yes. And you're still a great parent. You're still a great parent, but you have to get that child to the match. Yeah. And that is where the child's going to heal. It's about the child's healing. It was really hard for us, and our listeners know our story, but it was really hard to place him with another family. And the church was not overly supportive, and our family was, it was horrible, but I could not give him what this other family could give him. And the way that he responded to them and matched to them was a beautiful thing. And I felt the same way, is God used us to be that bridge to get him where he needed to be. And I had a lot of peace in that, even though everyone around was saying so many different things. I felt like we had done what God asked us to do.
Oh my gosh.
Then we got the call about Vivi. So we got the baby right after. So.
And you're giving me chills. You're giving me chills with that story, because I know what you mean, because the agency said, can't you just try harder? Why don't you get some more therapists in the home? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?
Strap the baby to, they told me to strap the 2-year-old to me at all times, but I had a 6-month-old. I couldn't hold him all the time. And he didn't even really want me to hold him all the time.
No.
It was just awkward. And so if you're having those struggles and it's been a couple of months and you feel bad, please listen to us. There is a family out there where that child belongs. So don't feel bad. You are the bridge. I love that. And that child will get to where they need to be. Don't have guilt. God is just using you in this interim time, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, April, when I get the Christmas card from the family
Yeah.
who adopted her, and I see her beaming, and I see like this woman became a mother and this man became a father. And you know, in
you were
that
a part of that.
disruption, yeah, in that, what felt like a disruption to me was what was actually the creation of a magnificent, loving, incredible, exemplary family. And there is so much guilt they put on you. And again, you've got to trust your instincts. You know what your other children need.
Yes.
You know what you can
Yes.
and cannot handle. We are the people. Look, if anybody could have done it, April, you could have. If anybody could have done it, I could have. But it wasn't right for that child.
Right.
In my situation, and it wasn't right in yours. And now look at them.
Yes. I love this. We could talk all day. But you're going to come back. You're going to come back on another episode. And I'm super excited because Jordan, who has been working with us, knows you. She had interviewed you before, and she was in the process of adopting, and then she brought home her child. So we are going to have like a mom powwow. We are going to talk about adoption, motherhood, how adoption changes us. I can't wait for the next episode. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for coming back.
Thank you, April.
For nearly a decade, Adoption Now has shared inspiring adoption stories. Now, go behind the scenes, enjoy bonus content, and connect with our adoption community. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/adoptionnow. Or get one-on-one coaching at adoptionnowpodcast.com. If this episode moved you, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok. See you next episode.
At the end